I'm 93 years old, and my daughter hasn't called me in 3 years. Not because I lied to her, but because I told her the truth when she asked for it. Right now, I'm sitting in a one-bedroom apartment in Jackson, Mississippi. There's a small table, a television, and a photograph of 5 people hanging on the wall. 3 of them no longer speak to me. I had a wife for 45 years, 3 children, a house with a magnolia tree in the front yard, and a reputation for being the most honest man in my family, and it was that honesty, not a lie, not an affair, not a crime, that cost me almost everything I loved. What I'm about to tell you involves 5 questions, 5 questions that people in your own family may ask you or may have already asked. They sound harmless, they sound caring, they sound like someone who simply wants to know. But I'm telling you now, from this chair at 93 years old, with the scars to prove it, these 5 questions are doors, and once you open them, you may never get the warmth back into the house. My name is Clarence Webb. I was born in Meridian, Mississippi in 1933. I married my wife, Dorothy. Everyone called her Dottie, in 1956. I worked for 34 years at Masonite, the lumber and fiberboard plant. Every day I came home smelling like sawdust and formaldehyde. We weren't wealthy, but we had each other, and for a long time that was enough, until I started answering questions. Here's question number 1. And I need you to listen carefully because this is where it all begins. Question 1. How much money do you have saved? My oldest son, Raymond, asked me that in 2003. Raymond was born in 1958. He lived in Memphis and worked in the insurance business. He was always the practical one. Dottie had passed away 2 years earlier from sudden heart failure, and I was living alone in our house on Poplar Springs Drive. Raymond drove down one Sunday, sat at my kitchen table and asked it just like that. Dad, just so we know, how much do you have put away in case something happens? It sounded like concern. It sounded like a son looking out for his father. So I told him. I said, about $140,000, give or take. My pension covers the bills. I'm doing fine. He nodded and didn't say much more about it, but I watched what happened next. Within 6 weeks, Raymond mentioned he was looking into some investment opportunities. My daughter Patricia called asking about long-term care insurance. She said she had a friend who sold policies. My youngest son, Curtis, who hadn't called in 3 months, suddenly called twice in 1 week. Somewhere during the conversation, he mentioned that his truck needed a new transmission. That number moved through my family like electricity through water. I didn't hand them money, I handed them a number, and that number changed the temperature of every conversation for the next 20 years. And that's only question 1. I've got 4 more, and each one cost me more than the last. Question 2. What do you really think of him? Patricia, my middle child, was born in 1961, stubborn like her mother. She married a man named Dale Buckner in 1985. Dale was a car salesman in Hattiesburg. He drove a Pontiac Firebird and wore enough cologne that you could smell him before he got out of the car. He had the kind of smile that looked rehearsed, like he'd practiced it in front of a mirror. And me? Well, I tried. I really did. I tried to like Dale. I went from being dad to being a balance sheet. But what I didn't understand then and wouldn't understand for years was that it wasn't the money itself that changed things. It was the fact that I removed the mystery. When your family doesn't know what you have, they treat you like a person. The moment they know the number, they start doing math, and family math is the ugliest kind there is, because nobody ever admits they're doing it. Patricia asked me directly in 1989. They were having problems. Dale had been staying out late and spending money they didn't have. She sat in my living room and said, Daddy, tell me the truth. What do you think of Dale? Now think about that for a moment. If your son or daughter sat across from you right now and asked what you really thought about the person they married, would you answer? Or would you stay quiet? I didn't stay quiet. I said, baby, I think Dale loves himself more than he'll ever love you. I think he's careless with money. I think he's careless with your feelings. And I think you deserve better. She cried. She hugged me, and she said, I needed to hear that. 18 months later, Patricia and Dale reconciled. He went to their church, stood in front of the congregation, cried openly, and promised he was going to change. She forgave him, and that was her right. But here's what she didn't do. She didn't forgive me, and she didn't keep what I said to herself. Dale knew every word, every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every Sunday dinner. I could feel it, the way he looked at me across the table, the way Patricia would tense up whenever I walked into a room where Dale was standing. I wasn't her father anymore. I was the man who had insulted her husband. I didn't see Patricia for 3 Christmases in a row, 3 years, because I answered her question honestly. And here's the part that still burns. She asked. She came to me and said, "Tell me the truth." And when I did, I became the enemy. Not Dale, me. Now question 3. And this one, this is the one I still struggle to talk about without feeling a weight in my chest, because this is where I learned that honest words don't just hurt the person you say them to, they travel. Question 3. Am I your favorite? My youngest son, Curtis, asked me that. Curtis was born in 1964. He was always the sensitive one, the one who noticed things. He noticed Raymond got the newer bicycle. He noticed Patricia got to stay up later. He noticed everything, and he kept a ledger in his head that I didn't even know existed. He was 34 years old when he asked me. We were fishing at Okatibi Lake, just the 2 of us, which was rare. Out of nowhere, he said, "Dad, be honest with me. Between me, Ray, and Patricia, who's your favorite?" Now I want you to think about that, really think about it, because if you have children, one of them may ask you this someday, and what you say next can never be unsaid. I should have said, "I love all 3 of you the same." That's the right answer. That's the only answer, even if it isn't perfectly true. And if you're a parent, you know it's never perfectly true, but it's the only thing you're allowed to say. But I was the honest one, remember? Ask Clarence, he'll tell you straight. So I said, I don't have a favorite, but I'll tell you this. Patricia needed me the least. She was always strong on her own. You and Raymond needed me at different times and in different ways. That's what I said, and I thought it was fair. I thought it was balanced. I thought it was careful. But what Curtis heard was, Patricia is the strong one. You are not. He didn't say much. After that, not for the rest of the fishing trip. He reeled in his line, packed up the cooler, drove me home. But here's what I never expected, and this is the part that changed everything. Curtis didn't keep that answer to himself. He called Raymond. He called his brother and said, "Dad told me Patricia's the strong one." He said we both needed him. He said Patricia didn't. And Raymond already had his own ledger, his own list of disappointments, his own collection of moments when he felt second place. So that Thursday night, Raymond called me and said, "So Curtis is telling me you've been ranking us. Dad, is that true?" One conversation at a fishing lake, one answer, and suddenly 2 of my 3 children were upset with me. Not because I had been cruel, not because I had played favorites, but because I tried to be honest about something that doesn't have an honest answer. Some questions are traps. And who's your favorite? Maybe the oldest trap of them all, because no matter what you say, someone ends up hearing what you didn't say. Some words don't explode, they seep, they work their way into the wood of a relationship so slowly that by the time you notice the floor is soft, your foot has already gone through it. And if any of this feels familiar, I want to thank this channel for giving people like us a place to speak. Old folks sitting alone in apartments, carrying stories that weigh more than we do, if you're listening. And any of this means something to you, subscribe, it's free, hit the like button, and leave your story in the comments, because I read them, and some of your stories carry even more weight than mine. Now, before I get to question 4, I want to say something directly to you, and I need you to really hear it. If you're sitting there thinking, I would never treat my parents that way, let me ask you something. Do you know how much money your mother has saved? Do you know what's in your father's will? Do you know who the house is going to someday? And if you do, no, who told you? And what did you do with that information? Did you start calling more often or less? Think about that carefully, because I promise you they noticed. But even that isn't the worst part, because question four is the one that cost me my house, my car keys, and the last piece of independence I had left. Question four, what's really wrong with you, health-wise? In 2011, I was 78 years old. My doctor told me I had stage 2 prostate cancer. Treatable, serious, yes, but treatable. The doctor told me I had stage 2 prostate cancer. Treatable. He looked at me and said, Clarence, this is manageable. We'll keep an eye on it. Most likely, you'll die with it, not from it. And I believed him. I'm 93 years old now, and so far he's been right. But I told my children, all 3 of them, because I thought they deserved to know. And God help me, I was still trying to be the honest one. Within 3 months, Raymond drove down from Memphis carrying a folder. Inside were brochures for assisted living facilities in Rankin County. Patricia called and suggested that maybe I shouldn't be driving anymore. Curtis, who hardly ever called, suddenly had strong opinions about my diet, my medications, and how I should be spending my days. I was 78 years old. I mowed my own lawn, drove myself to the grocery store, cooked my own meals, and within 4 months of telling my children about a treatable diagnosis, they were talking about me like I was already gone. Raymond got power of attorney, just in case, Dad. They didn't take my life away all at once. They took it an inch at a time. A car key here, a checkbook there, a decision made without me at a kitchen table where I wasn't even sitting. And here's something nobody tells you about getting old. The diagnosis doesn't shrink your world. The people who hear about it do. Your body may still be working just fine, but the moment your children learn something is wrong, they start building a smaller life for you, a smaller room, a smaller future, and they do it out of love. That's what makes it so difficult to fight. Love, brochures, gentle voices, a hand on your shoulder. One morning you wake up and realize you're no longer living in your own home. You're living inside someone else's idea of what's safe for you. I lost the house on Poplar Springs in 201 for .it, sold for $9,500. Raymond handled the sale. I moved into this apartment in Jackson, and that magnolia tree he planted back in 1956. Someone else waters it now. You know, something I finally figured out when I was 88 years old. Telling your family that you're sick doesn't necessarily bring them closer. Sometimes it just brings them into your business, and those are not the same thing. I want to know something. Which of these questions have you been asked? And which one cost you something? Tell me in the comments, because I know I'm not the only person who's lived through this, and deep down, you know that too. Now we come to question 5. I saved this one for last because it cost me more than all the others. Question 5. Why did you and Grandma really separate that time? My granddaughter Keisha asked me that. Patricia's oldest daughter, 26 years old, sharp as a tack. She had been cleaning out Patricia's attic and found a box of old photographs, pictures from 1978 when Dottie and I were separated for 7 months. Nobody in the family talked about those 7 months. It was the drawer that stayed closed. The subject nobody touched. Keisha called me one afternoon, sweet voice, curious, Granddaddy, what really happened? By then, Dottie had been gone for 18 years. She wasn't here to defend herself, wasn't here to explain, wasn't here to tell her side of the story, and there's something I didn't understand at the time. Telling the truth about someone who has passed away is not the same as telling the truth about someone who is still alive. A living person can push back, they can explain, they can say, that's not the whole story. The dead can't. They just sit there and carry whatever version of the story you leave behind. The truth was this. Dottie had an affair with a man in her church choir named Leonard Graves. I found out, we separated, she ended it, we went to counseling at First Baptist, we rebuilt our marriage, and we stayed together for another 23 years until she passed away. I never told anyone, not because I was ashamed, because it belonged to us. We carried it, we repaired it, and it wasn't anybody else's burden to carry. But Keisha asked, and by then I was 86 years old, tired of carrying old secrets, tired of holding closed doors shut, and I thought maybe enough time had passed. Maybe the truth couldn't hurt anyone anymore. I was wrong. I told Keisha. I said, your grandmother had an affair. We separated. We worked through it. I forgave her, and we moved on. And I watched my granddaughter's face change right there on that little phone screen. We were on a video call. I watched something break in her eyes, because Dottie wasn't just her grandmother. She was her hero, the woman who braided her hair, the woman who taught her how to make sweet potato pie, the woman who told her that a person's word is their foundation, and with that one sentence I cracked the foundation she had built her whole life around. Keisha didn't call me for 4 months after that, and when she finally did, something had changed. She was polite, kind even, but different, like she was talking to a stranger who just happened to know her name. That's when I realized something. I hadn't freed myself from a secret. I had simply transferred the weight of it onto a 26-year-old woman who never asked to carry it. The dead don't get to explain themselves. When you tell the truth about someone who's gone, you're not having a conversation. You're holding a trial where the defendant can't appear. That isn't honesty. That's a verdict. So there they are. 5 questions, 5 honest answers. And here's what they cost me. Raymond sees me as a number. Patricia hasn't spoken to me in 3 years. Curtis turned one answer into a family fire. I lost my house and much of my independence, and my granddaughter can no longer look at her grandmother's photograph the same way. I was the honest one. Ask Clarence. He'll tell you straight, and I did. And in the end, it cost me nearly everyone sitting at that table. But there's something I need to tell you, and I hope you really hear it, because this lesson took me 93 years to learn. I don't regret being honest. I regret not understanding that some questions aren't really questions. They're not doors, they're matches, and every family is made of wood. If someone asks how much money you have, what you really think of their spouse, which child you love most, what's wrong with your health, or what truly happened in your marriage, look them in the eye and say, I love you, and that's enough. That isn't a lie, it's a boundary. It's a wall built around the things that could burn the whole house down if they escaped. And if you've already answered one of those questions, if the damage has already been done, if you're sitting there thinking about the answer you wish you could take back, you can't unring that bell, but you can stop ringing it. The next time someone asks, you don't have to open the door. Last Tuesday, Keisha called me. First time in 6 weeks. She said, Granddaddy, I'm making sweet potato pie this weekend. Want me to bring you some? I said, baby, I'd love that. She didn't mention Dottie. She didn't mention 1978. She just asked about pie. And for the first time in a long while, I thought maybe that's how healing happens. Not through another conversation, not through another confession, just through pie, showing up, sharing a meal, and leaving certain doors closed. Now, if you think I'm wrong, if you believe family deserves the whole truth every time, no matter the cost, then maybe you haven't been asked these questions yet, or maybe you have, and you simply don't remember what it cost the person who answered them. My name is Clarence Webb. I'm not a liar. I'm not a bitter old man. I'm just someone who learned far too late that sometimes love lives in the things we choose not to say, and sometimes that is enough.